As iron sharpens iron, so one man sharpens another.
Welcome. If you love Jesus and you care about protecting your loved ones, your church, and your community, or if you just want to learn how to safely and competently use a pistol, then this video is for you. Here are the things that we're going to cover. Why you, or at least some members of your church safety team, should be armed. How it's not just the pistol, but it's an entire ecosystem built around you, the defender. How a semi-auto pistol functions. If you're watching this video, you're probably concerned about your safety and the safety of people that you care about. Over the past 2 decades, we've averaged about 2 mass killing events at houses of worship in the United States per year. Also, the amount of crime and mass shooting attacks out in public has increased to a rate that I could have never imagined when I was young. As of the filming of this video in 2025, we've had 4 years of open borders and multiple threat warnings from the FBI of an imminent domestic terrorist attack, and threat levels are extremely high. So if you're like me, you want to be able to do whatever you can to protect your loved ones. And I don't want you to put your trust in your ability to protect yourself or others. Ultimately, security comes from God. If you have a relationship with God through the blood that Jesus shed for your sins and mine on the cross, then you have security that people can't take away. In Matthew 10, verse 28, Jesus said, "Do not fear those who kill the body, but are unable to kill the soul, but rather fear him who is able to destroy both soul and body in hell." So we don't want to fear men. But we do know that evil doesn't just decide to stop itself. If there is the threat of an attack, and even though the chances are low, the stakes are super high, but if there's a threat towards you and your church or your community, you want to be able to respond to that threat. And you want some members, not everybody decides to carry a weapon, and that's great. I totally affirm you if you decide that's not what you should do. But if you do decide to do that, then we want some members who are trained and good with that weapon and maintain a level head to protect people from that threat. And unfortunately, if history repeats itself, which it does, for 2 houses of worship this year, it won't be a matter of if it happens, it'll be a matter of when. When it does happen, even if it only takes a few minutes for police to respond, multiple lives will be lost. However, if there are armed and trained, competent defenders there, many lives will be saved, and in some cases, 0 innocent life will be lost. So obviously, when you're out around town, you're at Walmart or at church, you're not going to be carrying a long gun like a rifle or a shotgun, or at least I hope you're not. But what you can do is you can carry a concealed pistol in a very safe holster. And that's what I do, is I like to carry, as you can see, this is a cleared firearm, and there's a barrel blocker in here so you can tell that it's safe. But you can do that, and if you train well with that, then you have an option to be able to stop evil. I pray that I will never have to use my pistol in defense of others, but I also pray that if someone evil is going to try to hurt people in my family or my community, then I pray that I'm there when it happens so I can do my best to stop them. Now, one of the things I didn't really understand when I first started down the path to looking to be able to protect myself and others is that it's not just about the pistol. It's really about you, the protector. And there's a whole set of tools and training that go around making you better at being able to do that task. So that whole system, that ecosystem, if you will, of things that go into making you a good protector are, of course, yes, a pistol. You're going to need a really good concealment holster that allows you to conceal it and is a safe holster. You're going to need a gun belt that will help give you enough support that it can hold up the weight of the gun and is easy to adjust and use. You're going to need a safe place to store that pistol, whether that's when you're at home or if you're out in your car and need to lock it up. You're going to need the right kind of ammo. So you're going to have a certain kind of ammo you're going to train with, and you're going to have a different kind of ammo that when you're carrying the gun that you're going to use. You're going to have eye protection, ear protection, a shot timer. You're going to want to carry also a less lethal option, and my favorite is OC spray or pepper spray. And finally, you're going to need a lot of training and some time to learn these skills and become good at those things. It's not like you buy a pistol and you just check a box and go, cool, I'm a protector now. Instead, you're on a journey becoming a well-trained, loving, competent protector. And as I look back, I spent way more on ammo and training than I ever spent on my pistol. I bought a used Glock 19 for $475. But as I look back over the past 6 years, I've probably spent, I don't know, $4,000 on ammo and training. And while I haven't achieved my goal of becoming an elite protector, I can tell you that I have become a very competent and confident shooter and protector. And that's the journey that I'm on, and I invite you to join with me. Now let's address each of these parts of this ecosystem that's going to help you become a better protector. As far as the gun, you're going to want a pistol that is number 1, safe and reliable. Number 2, that you shoot well. And number 3, that you can conceal. Now personally, several years ago, I bought a used Generation 3 Glock 19, and I love my pistol. It's been 100% reliable for me. And as far as safety, it's got 3 safeties built into it. And I'm going to show you a really cool 3D animation made by Matt Rittman that explains how those safeties work.
The Glock contains 3 safeties. The first is the trigger safety. The trigger cannot be pulled back unless the safety is engaged, allowing it to move past the frame. The second is the firing pin safety. The firing pin cannot move past the safety unless the trigger bar has pushed it up, allowing the firing pin to move past this safety. The final is the drop safety. The trigger bar is held in place by the housing. The firing pin cannot move forward unless the trigger bar has moved back and cleared the ramp of this housing.
So as we saw, the Glock has the trigger safety, and that means that unless something is directly pushing down on that, the trigger cannot be depressed and go backwards. And that's really nice. So if I'm reholstering, and if maybe a spent casing has fallen inside my holster, or maybe I've got an undershirt or a jacket and some cloth is in there, as I'm reholstering, if something starts to push on that, that could be terrible, right? So it's really nice to have that trigger safety built in where it will not go back unless it's directly depressed, which is a great feature. There's also that firing pin safety built in, which is excellent. And it's got the drop safety. So even if I drop this, there's no way that firing pin can go forward unless the trigger has been depressed. And that's what we want. I would never carry a gun that isn't drop safe. But fortunately, most modern striker-fired firearms and many of the other firearms are definitely drop safe, and that's what you want. If you were to accidentally drop your gun, you might hurt an innocent person or even hurt yourself. And while we're speaking about dropping a firearm, I also want to mention if you're ever practicing your shooting, if you were to drop your gun, don't try to grab it before it hits the ground, as you might accidentally pull the trigger, get your finger caught in there and shoot yourself or someone else. If you drop it, let it fall, pick it up, and you'll be fine. Don't try to knee-jerk reaction grab it and accidentally pull that trigger. Be very, very safe. My Glock 19 is accurate, and I've learned to shoot it pretty well, both at close distance and at 25 yards and beyond. I'm a big enough guy. I'm a 5'11", about 220. I need to lose a little weight. But I'm big enough that I actually can conceal it well with the right holster that helps pull it back and get this handle of the gun close to my body, and a good gun belt. And as long as I dress well, like I've got a little bit extra size shirt on me, and if I work out and I can get my chest a little out here and my stomach back in, it's much easier to conceal. But I'm large enough that I can conceal this compact size Glock 19 without much issue, as long as I dress around it and use good tools to help me conceal it. Now, I do wish that it had a crisper trigger. I mean, it's not a bad trigger, but I wish it was a little better. And it'd be nice if it was a little bit easier to conceal. But I can definitely make it work, and it works reliably and very well for me, so I like it. My wife and I, we recently got to go and shoot the Shield Plus, the SIG P365, kind of the tiny original one, and those were both really good guns, like the trigger and the Shield a lot. But then I got to try the P365, the SIG P365, but the X Macro. So it's got a lot bigger grip on it, where you can really grip it. It's kind of like my Glock 19 size, but a little bit thinner, so it'd be a little bit easier to conceal. Really like that gun. It's got a compensator built in so that some of the gases port out to fight the recoil as you fire it. And I really liked it, like the texturing on the grip. The trigger's good, but it's different than I'm used to, so it'll take me a little while to get used to it. But it was great. The only thing is it probably costs like, I don't know, $900 or something. Whereas the other two guns, I think the Shield Plus is more like $450, something like that. And the P365s in California is probably more, I don't know, $550, somewhere in there. But anyways, cool guns, and I love the feel of the P365 X Macro. Another thing that just got added to the roster in California, I wish I lived in a free state like the rest of, hopefully most of you do, but here in California, the Canik, I think it's called a Mete MC9, was just added to the roster, and it's a little bit bigger gun than the Shield Plus and the P365, but it's got a phenomenal trigger, one of those pre-cocked striker fire triggers, and I think it's very affordable at about $450. So if you're in California, maybe check some of those out, are all interesting options for carry. If you're in one of the free states, I'd recommend, there's a lot of other great guns you could use for carry or for first-time pistols, and a great resource on YouTube for that is a guy named Honest Outlaw. He has all these great lists of like great beginner guns, great full-size guns, great compact, great subcompact, and he's got great content, so go ahead and check him out. Now, if you have a limited budget, I would recommend that you get an affordable but safe and reliable 9mm pistol, and then invest over time more of your money into ammo and training. And when I say affordable, you know, guns are not cheap, right? So some folks might get a $2,000 or $6,000 super tricked out pistol. But you know, if you don't have any skills, all that money's going to waste. So you know, you can get a Shield Plus for probably $450, or even used maybe less. So you could start with something like that. You know, a Glock 19, you can probably pick up a used one for the $450, $500 range at most. It's probably new, you can get it for $550. So if you do something like that, and then over time develop your skills, once you're good, eventually then you can buy whatever kind of fancy handgun you want. But start with something safe and get good at your fundamental skills. So why 9mm? Basically for two reasons. Number one, it's effective at stopping a threat. And number two, it's the most affordable round that is still good at stopping a threat. Over your journey, you're probably gonna shoot thousands of rounds of ammo as you're training and getting good and becoming competent. And so you might as well be shooting the least expensive round, the most affordable round, because that starts to add up over thousands of rounds, and get really good with that. And then once you're good, shoot, you can go out and buy any kind of awesome pistol and whatever caliber you want, but I would definitely recommend starting with 9mm. One of the mistakes that I made when I first started to get into trying to find a pistol that I could use for concealed carry is that I was a little bit overweight at the time, so I thought that the only pistol I'd be able to conceal would be a really tiny, like the Shield 1.0 from Smith & Wesson. And so I went on and bought one. And it turns out, and this is a totally cleared and safe weapon, it turned out that the Shield was super easy for me to conceal. You know, it's 3-inch barrel basically, and it's a nice single stack magazine that's nice and compact, so this is not a very thick firearm. So I could conceal it well, but I didn't shoot it very well. My hands are big enough that it just didn't really fill my hand. And at one point, I went into my local range where I could rent a couple different 9mm handguns and try them in the range, and I realized that I shot a Glock 19 and pretty much almost any larger double stack handgun better than I did this Shield. So eventually I sold the Shield and I bought a Glock 19. So if you're brand new to concealed carry, see if you can find a range where you can rent different types of firearms and find out what you shoot well. And then even better, if you've got some friends who could let you try out their holster along with a pistol, then you can see if you can conceal it as well. So make sure you try before you buy, as that'll save you a lot of heartache. Speaking of holsters, every pistol is designed to be married to a good holster. Just like that Frank Sinatra song, Love and Marriage, you don't want to have one without the other. All right, so a good pistol, that means that it's drop safe and it's reliable, right, is also gonna be very, very safe when it's in a good holster. So when I've got my pistol in this holster, there's no way that I or anybody else can pull the trigger once it's inside this holster. Also, all modern striker fire firearms like Glocks and M&Ps and SIGs, they've got a drop safety and a firing pin safety inside of them. So even if I drop this, there's no way that's going off. And that's exactly what I want. I don't just want a pistol floating around. I want it secured in a good holster where I know that it's safe. Now, when I say a good holster, there are 3 things that I mean by that. Number 1 is that it's got enough rigid material that there is no way the trigger can get pulled when it's inside the holster. The main holster that I use is this holster here, made by a company called Tier 1 Concealment. And it's made out of a material called Kydex. So it's super lightweight, but it's also extremely rigid. So once my pistol is inside this holster, there's no way that I or anybody else can pull that trigger, and I know that it's safe. However, there are other holsters, for example, this belly band here. And just to let you know, there's no one behind the camera, so don't worry about that. But this is an example of, I'm sure there's different kinds, but this is just one that I got off of Amazon that is a belly holster that you can wear under a shirt, and it's very comfortable, and you can keep a pistol in there. It's a pretty cool way to do it. Of course, it's under your shirt. But the material, at least in this holster, is flexible enough that if I put my pistol inside of it, so it's in there and it's comfortable and it would ride well. But if you get enough pressure in this guy, like you just heard the trigger pull back and click, it's possible to fire. And so that for me personally is a no-go. I will never use a holster that doesn't have a rigid thing that guarantees that trigger cannot get pulled. If I got in a fight with somebody and we're scuffling and they reach around and they grab that and it goes off and shoots me, that's not gonna be a good day. So I never use any holster that doesn't have something solid like Kydex that will absolutely 100% make sure there's no way that trigger is gonna get pulled when the gun is inside the holster. The second factor that I consider which makes a holster safe is its amount of retention. So I want a holster, like my holster from Tier 1 Concealed, that has enough retention that I can jump or run or do whatever I need to do and the gun is not gonna pop out from my motion. But I also don't want to have so much retention that I can't pull it whenever I need it. So fortunately, this particular holster, and many other holsters like it, have adjustable retention. And so there are some screws here and there are rubber spacers inside. So you can use a Phillips head screwdriver and tighten that retention down or loosen it up if there's too much. But I definitely want a holster that there's no way that gun's gonna pop out if I'm running or in a fight or anything like that, but I can always get to it and pull it when I need it. So the third factor I consider is that I want my holster to stay in place even when I'm doing something active. So with this holster from Tier 1 Concealed, you can see there's 2 clips here, and those are gonna go over my gun belt. And this one is called an inside the waistband holster. So this is gonna go inside my waistband here and clip over the front of my belt. And it's gonna stay there. So once I draw that pistol, it's not gonna pop out, or if I'm doing anything, it's gonna stay there. And that way I can always holster up very quickly if need be. And that's what I like. I don't want it moving around or coming off my body. I want it to stay right there so I can always reholster if needed, and it's reliable and ready for me. And I guess as kind of an honorable mention, it's kind of covered by number 1. I want, nice rigid material that there's no way I can pull that trigger, but I also want to make sure that it stays open. So it's rigid enough to always stay open so I can reholster. I don't want some flimsy material that's gonna come together that I have to kind of separate if I'm trying to reholster. I don't want something that's gonna snag the trigger. So that's pretty much covered by number 1. If you've got rigid enough material that you can't pull the trigger when it's in the holster, it should keep it open for you. But in case there are some holsters that have more flexible material that can collapse, and I don't want that. I want it to stay nice and open, so if I need to reholster, it's safe. So I feel extremely confident that when my Glock 19 is in this holster, I know it's safe. There's no way anybody can pull the trigger. And so that's what I like to do is when I'm finished carrying for the day and I'm gonna lock up my pistol, I'm gonna be carrying it on me, is I don't take the gun out of the holster where the trigger can be pulled. I just remove the entire holster, and I've got a big enough safe, I can put this in my safe, lock it up, know that it's safe, and then when I take it out, I know it's safe. There's no way I can pull that trigger, and that's my favorite way to do that. Obviously, good holsters are not cheap. You can probably get a good one that doesn't have a backup mag for 70 bucks or more, and just has kind of this portion that you can use to hold the pistol. I think this one from Tier 1 Concealed is like I don't know, maybe 130 bucks or something like that. But at any rate, they're not cheap. And if they don't fit well, like I know a lot of people that can't stand these with a sidecar because it's just too big. It just drives them nuts. And I don't mind it at all, but I'm more concerned about that the system is comforting than being comfortable, in my own opinion. Kind of stole that one from Clint Smith from Thunder Ranch. But some folks, I know they hate these. They're just not comfortable. So if you have friends, maybe on your church safety team or maybe at your range, and you can ask them, hey, what kind of gun do you carry? What kind of holster do you use? And just borrow it from them and try it and kind of carry it around for a little bit and get a feel for what you like. That's great because they're expensive and a lot of times you can't send them back. So see if you can try one out and make sure that you like it before you spend good money on it. Now, it's worth it. A good holster is worth, the high price of admission because it's going to keep you safe and be very functional for you. But try not to buy one just on first glance or a recommendation if you've got an option to try one out first. So as far as how to carry your pistol, there's only 2 configurations that I would recommend. And the first one is going to be Appendix carry, which I've demonstrated. That's my favorite, where it's in front of your hips. And if it's just the pistol, maybe it's kind of like at a 12 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock position. The other one that I would recommend would be strong side carry. So if you're right-handed, this is your strong side, and you might carry it 3 o'clock or maybe 4 o'clock. Or if you're left-handed, it would be over here on the opposite side, kind of just a mirror image. What I do not recommend is do not carry small of back. One, because it takes longer to draw from small of back, but even more so, someone behind you in line at a convenience store or whatever can just snag that gun from you depending on how much retention you have. So I do not recommend that. I do not recommend carrying on your ankle, as that takes a long time to get to that, as it does to just come from appendix or strong side. I do not recommend that you carry off body if at all possible. I do not recommend that you carry a pocket in your pocket, a pistol that takes a little bit longer to get to that and get it out than just, a regular type of holster. So I do recommend appendix or strong side carry. Also earlier I mentioned that this is an inside the waistband holster. Basically there are 2 types of holsters. I mean, there's a ton of holsters out there, but to be used with a gun belt, usually it's either inside the waistband or outside the waistband. And for concealment, I would definitely recommend inside the waistband. Now, if you can just kind of open carry, outside the waistband is great and just get some extra retention with it so nobody can take your gun. But typically for concealed carry, you're going to want an inside the waistband holster, whether it's appendix carry or strong side. Now, if you're using a holster that's designed to work with a belt, just a normal belt you use for everyday dress is not going to have enough support, unless you use a really thick one, to support the weight of that gun and make you feel comfortable. And so the belt that I use is by a company called Core Essentials, I believe. And I like this. It's very lightweight, but it's got a thin amount of metal that's lined inside the belt that helps give you enough rigidity to support the weight of the pistol and the holster. And the other thing that I really like about this holster, I don't know if you can see it in here, there's kind of some ridges like for a ratcheting system. So when I insert it here, you can hear it click as I go. So you can get it as tight as you want, where it's comfortable, but firm enough to support that holster in your pistol. And then if it's too tight, like maybe you just ate or you sat down, need a little extra room, you can push this button here, and then you can let it back out to whatever length you want, and then tighten it up again later as needed. So you can release it and tighten it up really quick and really easy. So I really like this belt from Core Essentials. I've worn it forever and it shows. But there's also another company called Next Belt that makes a similar system. And I believe you can get a Next Belt for about $60 or so on Amazon. One tip for appendix carry, when I put my belt on, instead of putting it on the normal way where you would come through this first loop and loop it around and cinch it up where your belt buckle is in the center, I don't do that because then when I try to put my holster in, it's harder to get a good grip with the clips if this belt buckle is in the way. So instead, what I like to do is I like to skip this first belt loop, come to the next one, come around all the way that way, put my belt over here, and now I can easily get my holster to clip in much more comfortably and easily without that belt buckle in the way. Whenever I'm wearing, whether it's pants or shorts that have belt loops, this is the setup I'm running. So I've got my gun belt, my Tier 1 concealed holster, and I'm good to go. But a lot of times here where I live in Central California, it's super hot. And so there's a lot of times where I'm definitely wearing shorts that have no belt loops. And in that case, I use a different holster. It's called the Phlster. And it can be used, it's got its own gun belt built in basically. So you can wear that kind of under whatever shorts and shirts you're doing and be in good shape. And it still gives you, it keeps the holster in the right place. It's got Kydex built in so you can't pull the trigger, and it's really nice. And I'll show you an example here. And these are the two setups that I use the most. So here is the Phlster, I believe, Enigma it's called. And this is the version 1. They've got a version 2.0 that's out now. It's got some improvements to it. But the version 1 has worked well for me. It's got the belt that comes around, and it's got a special magnet that will click in there, and it's pretty easy. You can pop it out when you're done. The version that I got, I ordered to get something called a sport belt, which is on the back here. And it's this really cool material that's kind of stretchy that makes it more comfortable. And also it's got pouches where you can store an extra mag, or maybe you want to store a tourniquet or something like that. So I really enjoy that. Pretty much the only thing I don't like about this Phlster is what you just saw, is that it doesn't have adjustable retention, or maybe it does and I'm just a moron and I don't know how to adjust it. But as you saw, the gun fell out, and so I do not like that. And I wish it would have adjustable retention so I could lock that in a little bit tighter to make sure that never happens. So Phlster, if you're watching this video for your version 3, if you could add adjustable retention, that would be awesome. Now the Phlster Enigma is not cheap. Including the sport belt, which is an additional feature. I think it cost me like 192 bucks. But I use it a ton, and I love not, if I've just got athletic shorts on or something without the belt loops, it's fantastic. So it's definitely a cool option to check out if you're in that situation many, many times. So obviously, you don't want anyone who's not authorized to have access to your pistol when it's not on you. Now that could be a thief, or it could even be a child who's in your home or visiting your home. So my first firearm was a shotgun. So I got a bigger safe that could hold a couple long guns, this Barska safe. And one thing I like about it is that, well, it's got some room for a couple of longer guns in the base. It's got some room up here where I never have to take my pistol out of the holster. I can just take off the entire holster. Never have to take the pistol out, no chance I could pull the trigger, and I can store it right there inside the safe. Now, a safe this size that holds a couple long guns and can read your fingerprint is probably about $350. Now, for my wife, for her pistol, she has a smaller safe she keeps next to her bedside, and this also reads your fingerprint. So as you can see, there's not enough room here you could like store it. Well, if it wasn't such a big holster as mine, maybe you could put the holster in there, no problem. But she has an external safety on her pistol, so she just sets that safety, keeps it here stored safely. And I think on Amazon, you could pick up not exactly this model, but a similar model that can read your fingerprint and the size to store a pistol for somewhere around $70. Now, there's also times when you're out driving around and you're going to go somewhere where you're not allowed to bring your pistol with you. For example, this might be like a federal courthouse. So in that case, you want to keep it locked securely in your car to make it as hard as possible for a thief to be able to get access to it. So I know in my car, I have a smaller pistol safe, kind of like the one that my wife uses, and I've got anti-theft hardware wrapped around some of the seat hardware under the seat, and then that secures that to the safe. So you could do a similar model like hers that reads a fingerprint, or for a more budget-friendly option, you can get a combination lock version that's about 20 bucks on Amazon. For training at the range, you'll want to get inexpensive ammo. Typically, I get either like Blazer Brass 9mm, or this is MagTech. And what I get is I get what's called full metal jacket. And what full metal jacket means is that all of the bullet, except for the very base of the bullet, is encased in metal, typically copper. This is the least expensive kind of ammo, and usually I can get a box of 50 rounds for about 12 bucks as of May 2025. Some people refer to full metal jacket as ball ammo, as it's fully encased. Now, you'll want to train with full metal jacket as it's inexpensive and a great way to train, but you do not want to carry full metal jacket ammo in your pistol when you're carrying your pistol. Why not? because the full metal jacket round has a problem of over penetration. And so if you were to shoot at a bad guy, for example, the bullet might pass all the way through the bad guy, then go and hit someone innocent behind them. And that's absolutely not what we want to do. Instead, when you're carrying, you want to carry what's called hollow point ammunition. And I'll show you a close-up of it. But in the cavity in the top part of the bullet, there's a cavity that's made, kind of a divot taken out. And the reason for that is due to the physics of the way that works is when that bullet makes impact with a target, it starts to mushroom out and deform and spreads out the mass of the lead of the bullet. And that transfers more energy into your target, which is good. And it also prevents or does a way better job of preventing that bullet from passing through the target so that it stays in your target, dumps all the energy into that target, and really reduces the chances of that bullet over penetrating and going through and hitting someone innocent on the other side of your target. Now, hollow point ammo is more expensive than full metal jacket ammo. I can get a box of 25 hollow point rounds for about $25, but it's completely worth it. I would never want to risk if I had some kind of threat where I had to shoot at a bad person trying to hurt people. I don't want to take that chance that your round could pass through that target and hurt someone who's innocent. Hollow point ammo is also commonly referred to as defensive ammo, and some examples of that include Hornady Critical Duty, Speer Gold Dot, and Federal Hydroshock. Now, whatever type of defensive hollow point ammo you choose, be sure that before you start carrying it, you go to the range and you test it. You want to make absolutely sure that that hollow point ammo cycles well in your pistol. Some pistols can be kind of picky about hollow points. My Glock 19 seems to just shoot everything. But I know I've heard stories of certain ammunition does not run real well in pistols, and you don't want to find that out if you have to pull out your pistol when there's a threat and realize, oh, it won't cycle the rounds. So make sure whatever kind of defensive ammo you get, you test it out at the range and make sure it cycles perfectly so you're confident that if you ever need to use it in real life, you're in good shape. Whenever you're going to do live fire practice, in other words, using real ammo in your pistol, you're going to need both eye and ear protection. And with eye protection, one of the reasons you're going to need that is that if the ammo were to hit any kind of steel or have any kind of ricochet and something were to come back, you definitely need something to protect your eyes. Also, if there was a failure with your pistol or with the ammo, let's say something gets clogged in the barrel of the gun and you don't realize it, and then you try to shoot off another round, well, that pistol's going to explode and you want to protect your eyes. So the chances of that are super small, but they're not zero. And so you always use eye protection when you're shooting live ammo. Also, the sound of a gunshot, for example, a 9mm round, is about 160 decibels. And anything 130 decibels and above will cause pain, and anything 140 and above will cause damage to your hearing. So you definitely don't want that. So make sure you go ahead and use some hearing protection. Now, I personally like this type of hearing protection. This is by Walker's. I think it's called like a slim profile. And what it's going to do is the material here is going to knock down the amount of decibels that's coming from that gunshot and protect your hearing. But what I like about it is it's got a microphone built in, so you can turn that on and you can crank it up to different levels, and it'll amplify the sound of other noises that are not gunshots, so it's easier to hear what somebody is telling you and to hear what your surroundings are. So I really like these. And the other reason I like them, that they're the slim profile, is if you're shooting a long gun like a rifle or a shotgun, you're going to be making a cheek weld. And if this is too big, it can get in the way of making your cheek weld and be awkward. You know, when you're shooting a handgun, you're not going to have any issues whatsoever. And I believe these you can get for $32 on Amazon or something like that. And if you're on a budget and you don't need that active microphone cranking up the volume of other sounds, you can just get passive protection for about $10 on Amazon. So you'll also want to learn how to safely disassemble your pistol, take it apart so you can clean it and lube it and make sure that it's running well. Now you can order a cleaning kit on Amazon for probably about $20 that'll have, won't have this many, but it'll have some cleaning patches you can use to help clean stuff, have a little bore snake you can run through your bore to clean that out, have some cleaning, lubricating, protecting material, kind of the CLP, and like some basic, kind of like this kit, some things you can use to help clean the gun as well. So make sure you get those materials, and to learn how to safely disassemble your pistol, just look up your make and model on YouTube, and that'll probably be an excellent video that will take you through every step, how to disassemble it, how to clean it, make sure everything's good, lube it, put it all back together. Now, I love having a shot timer because it can give me measurable data so I can see, am I improving, am I regressing, but it gives me something I can measure and I can check over time to see how I'm progressing in my skill set. But you don't want to start by seeing how fast you can go, and in a matter of fact, that can actually really retard your progress instead of advance your progress. So don't start off trying to see how quick you can go. Start off taking your time, getting some good instruction to make sure you get really good fundamentals and you're able to do those well. And then as you practice, you'll start to increase the speed. But don't start off trying to go fast. Now, you will get some initial training watching this video, and there are a lot of excellent videos on YouTube that can give you good fundamentals and safety and different ideas for how to train well. But it's really not the same as putting it into practice with a person who's training you and can watch what you're doing, give you feedback, and help you to grow. Now, to be doing live fire, you might just have some property where there's not a lot of neighbors around, a lot of space, and a wonderful backdrop where you can fire and have a great backstop where you can shoot into dirt that stops the bullet. And that's fantastic because it doesn't cost you anything where you have to pay a membership to do live fire. But probably for most of us, that isn't the case. And so you're gonna have to pay probably at least $100 or maybe much more depending on how frequently you train each year and what the membership costs are at a range for you in your area. However, one thing you can do that doesn't cost anything is dry fire. And so as you can see, we've got our safe cleared pistol. And so you can spend as much time as you want at home where you're being very careful and taking your time and working on your skills. You learn how to press that trigger to the rear without disturbing the sights. You're learning how to come out from concealment and get a good press out and on target. All that good stuff that costs you nothing. Now, before you do live fire, make sure that you understand the 4 fundamental rules of firearm safety, and we will cover that in another video coming soon. So make sure you understand those, that you've practiced those, that you know how to do them, when you're dry, so that you are ready how to be very safe and have safe handling of a firearm when it's live. And also, once it is live, I would recommend starting with accuracy. And so you've got some targets and you're learning, can I hit what I'm aiming at? And don't start doing that 400 yards away. Start that nice and close and learn how to hit what you're aiming at. And then after you can hit what you're aiming at, you can progress that to the next stage where now I'm coming out of a holster and I'm presenting out. Or maybe I don't want to start there. Maybe I'm just here at compressed ready and I press out and hit. And then I go to the next stage where I can come from concealment and I can hit. And then when I feel comfortable doing that, I can start to employ a shot timer. And with my shot timer, it's going to give me a beep. I'm usually going to have it on my belt down here, but you're gonna hit go and it'll have a random countdown so you can't game it. And then it'll give you a beep, which tells you to start. And with its sensor on there, every time you fire, it will record when that happens and how long it was. So you'll see, okay, from the beep until I fired was this many seconds, and then to my next shot was this and this and this. So that's a great way to measure your time. And of course, you can look at where you're hitting relative to your target to see your accuracy and use that data to improve over time. This shot timer is called a PACT 3. I like it a lot. It's about $130, and there are several other makes and models that you can find you might prefer. One thing that might be difficult for you, a lot of ranges do not allow you to come out of the holster, and so that makes it much harder to practice that skill. You can still always do that dry fire from home where you're coming out and finding your shot and boom, you're good to go. But it's not the same as live fire. So if you can find a range in your local area that lets you do that, fantastic. I know for me, one of the only options, but it's a great option, there's a range here in Fresno, California that has a concealed carry league. And so they'll have a different drill every 3 weeks or so, and it involves coming from concealment, firing, maybe you have to move and then hit a new target or come around, cover concealment and hit. Maybe you have to practice a reload. Fantastic league, and not only does it let you practice those things, it also puts a little pressure on you because you're in a competition, and that helps you build some stress inoculation and get used to a little bit of pressure. Of course, it's nothing like a gunfight, but it's a good way to start to get used to some pressure and performing when you're under pressure. Also, if you want to carry a concealed pistol, depending on where you live, that might cost you some extra money. So where I live here in California, they require 16 hours of training, and that's probably going to cost you at least $100. course, depending on who your instructor is. Then after you've completed that training, you submit that along with your request to carry a concealed weapon. It's probably going to cost you at least $80 to apply for that with your local police or sheriff's office. Here in California, once you are granted that the first time, every 2 years you have to requalify and re-request that. So that does get a bit expensive. I think at least 27 states now are considered constitutional carry, which says, according to the Second Amendment, you have the right to carry a weapon to protect yourself as long as you're a good, upstanding citizen. And in that case, it does not require you money to carry a weapon on you. So you're far more likely to encounter someone or something, like maybe a dog, threatening you with non-lethal force than you are likely to encounter someone threatening you with lethal force. And since we're only authorized to respond with proportional force, so for example, if someone is threatening us with non-lethal force, but we respond with lethal force, we're gonna go to jail for a long, long time, let alone it's just not right. And so I definitely recommend anybody who's carrying a lethal tool should also be carrying a less lethal tool. So if you're only carrying a hammer, every problem can start to look like a nail. And we want to have something in between a harsh word and a gun. And so my favorite is pepper spray. Number one, because it's portable, it's concealable, it's affordable, and it usually has no long-term negative effects on someone that you use it on, but it's still capable enough to get them to stop wanting to attack you. So at any rate, this kind of gives you a high-level picture of, over the long term, different aspects that you will want to work on, train, add to your tool set as a protector. Now, you're not going to become John Wick overnight, and you don't have to have all these different components overnight, but it's something that you can see in a big picture that can be part of a system that helps you become a better protector. To illustrate how a semi-automatic pistol works, Matt Ridman's 3D animation is so good, we're just going to let you watch that.
How a Glock works. As the trigger is pulled, the trigger bar pulls the firing pin back. The connector guides the trigger bar downward, releasing the firing pin and allowing it to strike the bullet primer. The expanding gases from the powder charge propel the bullet out of the barrel. The recoil forces the slide back, unlocking the barrel as it tilts downward and allows the extractor to remove the spent cartridge from the chamber. As the cartridge case is fully extracted, it comes into contact with the ejector and is forcefully ejected from the firearm. As the slide moves forward, the bottom rail of the slide strips a new cartridge from the magazine and pushes it up the ramp of the barrel and into the chamber. The cycle is now complete and the Glock is ready to fire the next round. As the slide moves back, the hook on the connector is forced inward. This allows the trigger bar to move upward. As the slide returns forward, the trigger bar is then able to retain the firing pin. Releasing the trigger allows the connector to move back into place, again enabling the downward movement of the trigger bar.
So thanks for joining me, and join us for part 2 where we get into some more of the fun stuff. We'll do our universal firearm safety rules, but then we'll get into all the fundamentals of the best way to shoot a pistol.